Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Data Science Summer School 2025. We are very happy to have you here again if you have just come back from yesterday's sessions on R programming. But if you're new here, whether you're a student, a researcher, or professional, this week is all about exploring how data can help us to understand and solve the pressing challenges in society today by going back to the basics and understanding the fundamentals of programming and mathematics. The summer school is organized by the Hertie School Data Science Lab with the generous support of the Hertie School and the Dieter Schwarz Foundation. It brings together a series of theoretical and hands-on workshops led by experts working in the intersection of data science, public policy, and social impact. And our goal for the summer school has always been to bring together high-quality educations in data science to the general public, especially to anyone around the world, people who do not have access to these kind of educations. And so I think for this purpose, we've been quite successful this year. As I've mentioned yesterday, we've had over 4,000 people who have registered for the summer school. And I think yesterday's sessions, we have over 500 people joining live at the same time, and over 2,000 people watch the different recordings of the sessions afterwards as well. And you're coming all from a lot of different places. I counted 115 different countries with people from over 1,500 different types of jobs and industries. And so, as you can see here, we're from a lot of different places and we're in a lot of different diverse backgrounds. And many of us cannot join live today due to the time differences in different countries that they live in. But everyone will also have time to catch up and watch the sessions recordings when they can. And a little bit of housekeeping. Everyone in the session has their microphone and video turned off as we have quite a large audience here. So we don't want to have too much of a chaotic issues when everyone have their phones on or have the mic on at the same time. So if you have any questions, you can put the question in the chat here or in the Q&A, and I will try to answer them as we come across them. Or if you need to raise your hands, then we will have the options for you to do so in the break when you can. And so for today's sessions, we will focus on introductions to Python programming, and I will be your lead instructor for these sessions. Just a little bit of introductions. So my name is Hui, and I'm the manager for the Hertie School Data Science Lab, and also the program coordinator for our Masters of Data Science for Public Policy. I am also a Hertie alumni as well. I studied in the Masters of Public Policy in 2020, and I graduated in 2021, 2022. And it was right in the middle of COVID. I wanted to come back to my home country in Vietnam and continue my job in the Ministry of Finance there. But because of lockdown, I had to stay here. And then I had the opportunities to work together with the Hertie team on building up this new program in Masters of Data Science for Public Policy. And it has been quite a rewarding journey so far. I helped to develop and design the curriculum program, and I support our instructors and our researchers in delivering and apply data science and public policy educations to our students. And I also help to craft a hands-on experience, especially in tutorials such as this, in machine learning and AI-generated content and computer visions. And so I actually do not come from a background in programming. So maybe just for full transparency, I can tell a little bit about my experience of learning Python programming. And I think I would love to also hear from you if you've had experiences before in learning how to code in Python and what has been your experience. So I've actually had tried to learn to code in Python at least 10 times before I somewhat became successful. So I think as a lot of us here today, we wanted to become coder because it seems like quite a cool profession, and we see a lot of people working in software engineering or working in development, and they do a lot of cool things. So I think that's something that I've always been attracted to this profession, which is the ability to think of an idea and then to build something really cool from it, from that idea, from almost nothing. And so I think that's something that really attracts me to learning how to code in Python. But I've been quite unsuccessful when I was still living in Vietnam because I was working a full-time job in social development and in strategic investment for IFC and World Bank projects. And then I work in the Ministry of Finance in Vietnam, mainly as a custom officers who work a lot with negotiations and conference traveling. So I do not have a lot of time to basically work on my technical skill sets and how to code properly. But I see the potential of the technology because in my day-to-day job, we would deal with a lot of data, inflow data, outflow data for customs, and a lot of people, I think, if you work for the governments, then you probably know that we all use basically Excels as our main workhorse for a lot of these projects. And it's not really efficient, I think, for tracking and for understanding the insights within the data. And so I really wanted to learn how to do coding in order to help with the job and also help to make our work faster and more efficient. But then because of the work that we had and because of the long hours that we had, I really didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of these coding jobs. And so I basically I spent a lot of weekends to maybe watch a lot of tutorials, maybe read some books, and then doing some coding exercises. And I wrote a lot of notes. You should see my notes when I was working in the governments. I think it was like loads and loads of books where I just like write down like the codes and also in files in my computer as well. But then I always felt like a fraud because I think you learn really intensively for 1 or 2 days in the weekend, and then you work for the entire week, and you didn't have the time to actually understand what you have been doing with the code, and so you kind of forget it, right? So I think that's a story that we see very often with people learning how to code, which is like they do it very intensively when they get motivated in the beginning, and then they have other things in their life kind of crashing with that, and so they do not improve gradually and efficiently over time. So I think this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to study at Hertie and came to Hertie to study because I wanted to spend the at least 2 years of my life to do and learn coding because I wanted to know whether or not I can do this and whether or not it's possible. Otherwise, I would always spend my life wondering if I can learn this thing or not. And so I decided to leave my job in the Ministry of Finance, and then I came to Hertie to study. And I basically spent my 2 years in the Master's of Public Policy program at Hertie to basically spend all my time learning how to code. Like I did learn a lot in class, and I loved the classes at Hertie, but the majority of the time I spent at home alone in a dark room, as you usually do, because as you've seen in a lot of these movies with hackers, like I try to emulate that by just like having all the lights off, which is very, very harmful for your eyes. So I would recommend against that. So always have your lights on when you code. Do not try to be cool and hacky when you do that. Yeah, I basically stay at home for the 2 years. I didn't go to a lot of parties. I didn't go to a lot of basically fun, cool events around Berlin when I was here. But I really spend my time with it, and then I see myself gradually getting better and better every day. When I think when you spend a lot of time with something, you really started to know the patterns within the language itself, and you really learn how the language works. And I think this is the same thing for I think learning almost anything. I think it's just it needs to take time. It needs to take consistency, and this is something that I highly recommend to everyone. So this is just one sessions that will probably take about 2, maybe 3 hours of your life. And so there's really not a lot that you can learn in these 2 sessions. I mean, I can give you a lot of informations, but then it's really up to you to spend time with the language, spend time with learning about it, and really spend time to upskill yourself in order to get better and better and improve over time. So like these 2, 3 hours will not be the pivotal point where you change your life or you change your way of coding, but I hope to be able to give you some guidance and some pointers on how to perhaps learn how to learn to code basically better. And so with that long introductions, I would like to start with sharing my presentations here so we can all start with sessions. So as you can see here on the screen, so today's session is on Python for data science. And I would like to start by saying that this session will be quite different from other sessions that you've seen or maybe you've learned in programming and in code. So what I mean is that this course will take quite a different path from most traditional Python courses. And so most traditional Python courses that you've seen, you probably have people walking you through every single thing from or what is a variable, what is a list, what is a table, what is a function. And this is quite a traditional way to learn how to do Python. And then I think you can find plenty of these kind of resources online, on YouTube, or on free resources already. So I don't want to repeat that. I don't want to waste your time with a lot of these. I want to rather, for these sessions, I want it to be quite focused and quite condensed in only 1 or 2 hours or 3 hours, where I will try to imbue you with some um, the way to how to learn effectively, right? So we have a lot of tools nowadays, things like ChatGPT, Cursor, and modern AI assistants that can help you to really tailor your way of learnings. We're no longer in the age of rote memorizations. So it used to be that, you want to learn something, you spend a lot of time with it, you learn the syntax, you learn to do a lot of rote memory in order to do it better. But I think we're no longer in that age anymore. So what matters today is more learning with purpose. You ask good questions, and then you use the right tools to explore, to build, and to solve problems. And we're supposed to learn Python by doing, by working on real projects and developing the confidence to figure things out when you get stuck, and not just watching a lot of tutorials and doing the same thing that everybody has been doing before. So, and also one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is I thought a lot about how to best deliver these courses to you. And I think because each of you comes from such a vastly different backgrounds and professions and experience and walks of life, that I think it would be a disservice to just have like the same kind of content delivered to you, and then you try to repeat the same thing that I do on screen. And then when you come across different problems in your daily life or in your work, you cannot solve it because it does not abide by the same kind of rules or the same kind of things that you've seen on the screens in the tutorial. So, like some of you may be researchers, some of you are artists, policymakers, or analysts, or entrepreneurs, or maybe just curious learners. And so each of you has a reason to learn Python, and that's why I hope that the way that I tailor and design this course will help you to set your own goals, to build your own roadmaps to learn Python, and then use AI to get personalized help for you in order to practice in a way that matters to you, right? So that's why I don't want to spend like the full 4 hours for you to do and repeat the same thing that I do on screen, but more or less of this being a discussions on how to learn better and how to learn Python in the right way, and the way that is tailored to you instead of the same way that is taught to everyone else. So yeah, with that, I want to introduce a little bit about Python as a programming language. So Python is generally is an open source general purpose scripting language. So what does this all of these word jumble mean? So first, for open source means that it's a language that is developed and maintained by a global community. It is free to use for anyone, anywhere around the world, very similar to this data science summer school. It's the same spirit of the open source communities that we built this summer school, so that anyone around the world can have access to this educations and this content and this material. And what it means when anyone can get access to the source code is that it's constantly improving and updating, right? So you have a large communities of people working on this language together. They always try to find improvements and ways to improve it further, and ways to contribute to the language by creating packages and libraries that can help people to do things better and faster. And it's also very transparent and collaborative, well, because everything is online, right? So the whole language and the whole source code is available online for everyone to read. And so anyone who wants to improve on the language, or anyone who wants to debug the language, or anyone who wants to help to make the language better, can get access to it in a transparent manner. But it also has some setback, because it's sometimes there are some bad actors that can try to inject really bad malicious code into their source codes. And that can be an issue, but that's also the benefits of having it open source, right? Because you also have a lot of people keeping track on what are the changes in the language. And then if they see any changes that are malicious to the language itself, they can also try to roll back on the different versions, and they can try to fix all these issues as well. And for general purpose, it means that you can automate a lot of different repetitive tasks with Python. You can change a lot of things with Python. You can do a lot of your daily work with Python, right? So for my personal use, one of the things that I use Python a lot for is to generate reports that I do very annually, right? So, for example, reports on numbers, reports on our events and marketing strategies, for example. So things that are numbers that are repetitive that you can pull directly from places like LinkedIn or Facebook or public repositories or maybe even internal database as well. It's very easy to automate that process and to make your life a little bit easier. So every year you do not have to return to the same task, or maybe every day or every week you don't have to return to the same task. That kind of makes you really bored, or it takes up a lot of time in your life or in your day where you can do other tasks that are more meaningful to you. And Python is not limited to just data science, but it's a very popular language with data scientists, mainly because of how useful and how easy it is to learn. So as you will see when during your learning process, it's just like English. A lot of it is based on the English language, and so it's very easy to learn for beginners. And scripting, what it means is that so there's really no strict definition of what scripting means, but you can think of it as a sequence of instructions or commands that you can give to the computer. And it helps you automate the task or process, mainly because the computer, I mean, it can work very quickly if you give it the right task, right? But then you have to give it the correct task and in the right sequence in order for the computers to execute them correctly. And so scripting is basically this process of writing out exactly the instructions and the commands with computers on how it can execute that instructions so that when it does, then it can execute these instructions quickly and can give you the right result. And you can think of it as like a pipeline, right? So you can give it some input, and this input can be data, this input can be some command. There's some processing taking place behind the scene, and this processing is basically those instructions that you give to computers. And then these instructions transform the input or the data that you give it originally into some kind of output that you would like to have. So that's the idea behind scripting. And then language, so you've already taken the R course yesterday, so you already understand. So Python is a programming language, it's not a ready-made app, right? So it follows grammar, syntax rules, just like any other language, human language or programming language. You write commands that the computer interprets and runs. And because it has this flexibility, you can build almost anything with Python. I think this is one of the strengths that Python has against quite a lot of different languages. So yesterday we learned R, and R is it's a very specific language for data analysis, and it's very popular with statisticians and data scientists because it's very focused on statistics, right? But Python is a bit more general, where you can do almost anything with it, including data and analysis. So scripting, like I wanted to talk a little bit about this because it's a very good way to think and to have a mental model about how these things work. So and you will see this, and you can think of this as an easy way to think a lot about things that happens in computer science, right? So you always have some kind of input, and then you put this input. So this input, it basically means it's data, right? So data could mean numerical data, it could be basically text data or anything. And then you give it into some kind of algorithm, and this algorithm is something that you define as instructions, right? So it's step-by-step instructions that you give to the computers, and then these step-by-step instructions kind of transform that input into some kind of output. And so this is basically the way that most programming works. So almost any kind of problems that you come across in programming, or any kind of computer science programs that you come across in programming, it's basically this process right here. Like it can be very complex. It can be a very giant database with a giant code base that helps to solve a lot of different problems. But breaking it down at the essential core, this is basically what it means, right? So you have an input, you put it to some kind of algorithm, and then you have some kind of output that you desire. And this is also the way that AI works, right? So for AI, like you can just basically replace the input with just data, right? So data, you have a massive amount of training data that you feed into an algorithm that you have built. It's basically like a deep learning model or a machine learning model, and it's also like a deep learning model or machine learning model. It's also step-by-step instructions, right, on how to transform the data in the right way. And so it's the same concept and the same mental model where you have some input data, you put it through an algorithm, and then you have an output where it's basically like like in this case for AI, it's like a prediction, right? So for example, if you think about ChatGPT, it's basically just a uh, giant model with the same kind of thing like this. You OpenAI give it a massive amount of data, and in this case, basically everything that is available online on the internet, like all the human knowledge in the form of text data or video data or image data, whatever you want, and then you transform it into ones and zeros, and then these ones and zeros are then put through a set of instructions to help transform them to find the relationship between the data between these one and zeros, and then what the output it is that there's some kind of prediction. Like it can help to predict what your next word might be, or it can help to predict what kind of answer that you're expecting when you give it a question, for example. So like this is a very important mental model that you should have in computer science and data science. And I highly recommend whenever you come across any computer science or data science or AI problem, think about this model, and you can simplify almost anything with this image basically. So for researchers, what can you use Python for? So Python is great for automating any repetitive computer-based tasks. So some common research applications are data collection. So this is usually the first steps in any data science projects, where you have to first define your problem. And once you define your problems, then you know exactly what kind of data you would need, right? So then once you know what kind of data you need, then you start to collect these data, whether it's through web scraping, or maybe you have some API access to different data sources, or maybe you even have to buy some data as well, right? So there's a lot of data owners out there that sells proprietary data, either because they scrape data maybe legally or illegally, or they have access to very secret and private data that they can kind of sell you. So like there's a lot of different ways to collect data. There's also survey data, where you can talk to people and you can have like a massive survey where people can put in informations, and then you collect that as your data as well. And then once you collect the data, then usually these data do not come into a very clean format. There's usually something missing, or there's some data that are really not in the right format that you want. So for example, sometimes you want data to be in the numerical data, but then sometimes the user or the survey takers, like they write not 0 and 1 as in numbers, but they write 0 and 1 like as in letters, right? So like these are a lot of things that you need to transform and you need to clean and you need to analyze. And so the second step is you need to clean the data. You have to manipulate the data and handle these messiness and transform the data for insights. And then once you have a clean set of data, only then can you start to use like all these different fancy algorithms and visualizations and process in order to learn some insights from it. Right? Otherwise, like if you do not give the algorithms the data on the format that it can read, then basically it gives you error messages. And so with the right data sets that is clean and handled well, and you start to create plots and dashboards and visual reports. You can also train models to detect patterns and make predictions with machine learning algorithms. Or you can also build deep learning and AI models by creating some neural networks and advanced AI tasks with this as well. So all of these are quite repetitive. So a lot of you working on data projects, you will see that like most projects, they follow the same kind of patterns like this, right? And so you can kind of automate this process by having some kind of ready-made script, or you can also automate this by just having Python scripts that helps you to do this on a regular basis. And so this is what works in a lot of these big organizations, like for example, like Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, right? So like where they have like a pipeline where they have ready-made scripts that kind of process data that are coming constantly from different streams into their data lakes, and then these scripts and these ready-made scripts that basically process and visualize and make predictions and then give reports to people that can make decisions within these organizations. And then for engineers, then how is it different from the research front? And so for development and for engineers, they care about different things, right? So for development and for engineers, they care about building full applications where people and where you have actual end users or people use them, and as opposed to for researchers where it's mainly you, right? So it's only you and your team to use them. And so you can be kind of messy a little bit. So like, for example, when I do my own research, I usually write code that are a little bit really messy. Like if like someone else read it, they might probably not be able to read it. It's really bad coding practice, and I would highly recommend everyone not to do the same thing as I do. I always recommend everyone to write code in a clear and concise manner and have proper documentations and but as you see when you work like a lot of times when you're under high pressure or when you don't have a lot of time, then you tend to be a little bit messy as well. And so this also is where AI and models and tools can really help to clean up the code and also to give you proper documentations if you do not have the time to do so as well. And then, but for engineers, when they build full applications, and usually you work with a lot of different teams, right? So it's not just you working on these things. Maybe as you are solo entrepreneurs and it's only you. But usually when you work in a teams and you have to have proper code documentation so that everyone can understand what's going on in the code. And especially if, for example, if you leave the team or if you are sick or something, then someone else can help you take over the job for you, and they understand what's going on in the model. Or maybe the application is something that like maybe 5, 10 years later down the line, someone still use it, and then they can still come back to the code and they can still understand what's going on. And so that's a lot of this is based on like what do you use the code for. And so if you do build full applications for a lot of end users, then the way that you write codes and the way that you do things is very different from the way that you do research. And also about the goal is also very different. For research, usually experimentations. You want to test ideas, you want to test out. So what are the insights that you can get from the data? So usually you want to move things very quickly and very fast, right? And so it's you can be a little bit messy and a little bit quick. But if you work in engineering and development, you are working mainly in production-ready systems, right? So you have to be very careful about the code that you write, so as not to break the systems. You have to have checks and balance at every point. You have to have multiple levels of checks within your code so that you can make sure that the code actually works properly before you push it to production. So you probably hear horror stories about how you have interns that have access to the code base and then delete an entire database of a company like overnight because they push a wrong kind of code into the system. So this is something that is it happens. It's rare, but it happens, and it's something that we can prevent by having proper process when it comes to coding in a production ready system and environment where a lot of people works, where you have to have different tiers of access and you have different tiers of checks and balance before any code can get pushed into the public use. You also have different priorities, right? In research and development, in research, your priorities is mainly on the ease of use and the speed of iterations. Right? You want to be able to write code quickly, to be able to get insights quickly, because a lot of times your research, it depends on the data that are being out right now, and then you want to be able to work quickly to get the insights or to get the basically the data that you want, and then you want to also iterate over them, and you want to change things very quickly. And then for development, it's more about you want to contain the resource, right? You want to make sure that the resources that are available to you is actually suitable with the kind of code that you have. So like one example that I can give is that whenever, for example, whenever I develop a website, for example, for a client, then I always have to think about, I always have to ask them, right? So like how many people do you expect to visit your website? So how many impressions do you want per month, per day, per week? So what is your expected audience size? Because if you have 1,000 people visiting a website per day versus 100,000, it's a very different infrastructure that you have to think about, and a very different thinking that you have to think about when you have to think about resource, right? So like every time you load an image on a website, it's resource that are being taken away. So every time a client like load something like a website on your websites, like images or videos, then it's bandwidth that is taken away from other parts of the websites and other users, right? So if you have 100,000 people like running to your website and running out the bandwidth, then you have to rethink your infrastructures and how to deliver it in the right way. And you have to develop your apps in the right way that can handle that kind of load and can handle that kind of resource intensive tasks. And so it's really a different way of thinking. It's a development. It's a lot about efficiency. It's a lot about making sure that it's ready. It does not break. Research is more about like how to do good experimentations, being able to test ideas. You can be a bit messy if you want to. So yeah, as you can see here in research, we care about flexibility and speed. And then in development, we try to optimize for stability and performance, and also sometimes speed as well, because as users, I think you want to have like quite very quick input and very quick result from whatever it is that you use. You don't want to have the app loading for a whole 5 minutes before you actually get what you want. And so it's in development, it's a lot of more priorities and things that they have to care about. And for the Python research toolkit, so there are a lot of different people have a lot of different preference for how to use Python. So some people, so for research, it's a lot of research, especially data scientists, they use Jupyter Notebook. And so for today's sessions, I just want to give some keywords so that you know what are some of these things that are out there that you can use, and then you can do research on them, and you can watch some tutorials on how to use them properly. Like most of these things are quite easy to use and quite intuitive. And I just want to give an overall introductions to you. So first is Jupyter Notebook, which is used very often by data scientists. It's very easy to use. It's very interactive. You have it's very similar to RStudio, as you have seen yesterday with Sebastian's, who guide you through RStudio coding. With so it has both the coding sessions and it has both the markdown sessions. You can also note down what you want to note, so that people can use the code and they can understand what's going on. There's also VS Code. This is from Microsoft. It's quite lightweight and this supports a lot of extensions. You can add a lot of different things to this. And this is what people usually use in industries quite often, because you can do a lot with this basically. And you can also write a lot of different languages with it at the same time. And then you have Cursor, which is a rising star in the field of coding editors. It's basically an AI power coding editors. It's built, it's the very same as VS Code, but then it integrates AI to help write and edit and explain code better. And so personally, I use Cursor for my day-to-day tasks because it's like everything is integrated into the tool. So you can ask and you can chat with the tool quite quickly. So like usually if you just have VS Code, then you can use Copilot. Or if you use Jupyter Notebook, then you can also use ChatGPT and Tandem, but then it's a bit easier if you use the tool already integrated into these coding IDEs, so that you don't have to worry too much about changing like back and forth between these different tools. And then my pro tip is to choose your tools based on your project stage. So you do not have to stick with one tool. You can use different tools for different stages of your project. So for example, personally, I always use Google Colab, which I will show a little bit a little bit later, so then you can see how it works. So Google Colab is basically an online tool where you can code and do and run Python very easily, and you can also collaborate with your teams on Google Colab. And it's very easy and very quick to spin up and to explore. Then once you pass that initial exploratory stage, then you move to maybe a refined and local coding editors like VS Code or Cursor to then refine your code further and to do more deep dive into it. And then maybe you can want to push it to GitHub in order to collaborate and to verify it and to check with your teams as well. And for cloud-based tools, I mentioned earlier Google Colab, so it's free and there's cloud-based Jupyter notebooks. We will show that a little bit later. So this is easy because there's really no setup needed. There's also GPU and TPU support. So if you try to do like deep learning, or maybe machine learning, then it's super easy to spin up these GPU servers on Colab. There's also DeepNote. This is for real-time collaborations between the teams. It's a very clean UI. It's great for teaching and for teamwork. So if I do tutorials, a lot of times I would use DeepNote, for example, so I can showcase to the students like how to maybe collaborate on a project together, especially if you have a project that you share with your team members and you want to work together on shared notebooks. There's also Kaggle notebooks, and this is mainly for people that want to maybe want to have access to the direct data sets that they have available there. So Kaggle, a lot of you probably know, it's basically a website for data competitions and also data learning. So they have a lot of data sets that are available there. Together with the coding notebooks, a lot of people have developed over the years. So there's you can learn a lot by people by just like reading these notebooks and these and the code that people have written before. And for packages and environment management, so packages and environments, it's basically very similar to what you learned yesterday, right? In libraries, right? So tinyverse or deployer, it's basically like these packages and environments management. It helps to it's basically just like libraries that can help you to um, basically understand. You can help you code better, basically. Like these libraries are written in a way that kind of automates a lot of tasks. And then these libraries are then managed by these package and environmental management so that you do not. So when you think about it, every time you load up a project, you want to create its own environments, right? So that you do not have a lot of clashing issues with your libraries and a lot of your environmental packages. So every time you spin off a data projects, the recommendation is to always create its own environment to load up its own libraries in order to make sure that these projects have the right dependencies and it can run in the correct way. And for version control just basically means that it's very the same concept as in different versions of your documents, right? So like in Microsoft Documents, for example, or maybe on Google Docs, you can roll back the histories of what you've written before, especially if you write something and then you don't like it and then you want to maybe check back like a previous checkpoint or you've written something that you were happy about. And so it's this very same concept with version control in code, where you have Git and GitHub, or GVC or repo zip, where it can help you to track the different changes that you've made within your code. So that this is especially important if you have a code in a production-ready environment. So a lot of times when people test their code and then they push code into their production-ready environment, the code breaks, for example. And then so the easiest way to fix is just to roll back to the previous version where the code works so that the product still works and the customers are happy and not get angry with you because you break the product with the new code. And so maybe just a little bit on the R and Python debate. So I think yesterday we have quite a lot of different questions on so what is better, right? So what is the difference between R and Python? I think this is also the questions that comes up a lot and quite in our master's data science program because I think we ask the students to learn both languages. In the first year, they focus more on R, and then in the second semester and also in the second years, they focus more on Python. And one of the reasons is that I think it's just these two languages, they are used for very different things, right? So R, it's still the superior language for building statistical model because it has a very good ecosystems of packages and libraries that are geared towards statistics and causal inference, right? So, and it's all maintained by scientists and statisticians. And so this is an area that is still very lacking in Python. So you have a very strong team of researchers and scientists that are working on R to make sure that R are handled and are maintained correctly. And Python is more general. And so you do have machine learning and deep learning packages that are much better in Python, but it's mainly because it's used a lot in production-ready environment. And so if you do want to work so this is relates to where you work and also where you want to work. So if you want to work in the public sectors or maybe in research institutions, in universities, for example, as researchers or maybe professors, then R is still the language to learn because it's used by mainly researchers and scientists. And then if you want to work for industry roles or yeah, maybe governments or maybe startups, then Python is the way to go. But if you want to work for research foundations, think tank, or international organizations, then R and Excel are still the way to go for these places. But the reason why we want the Masters of Data Science students to be proficient in both languages is that it gives you this option, right? It gives you the options to whether or not, like once you graduate, if you want to work for industry, then you can go and work for industries, and if you want to work for academia and continue your educations with PhD or postdocs, then you can continue to work with R, for example. And it's just this flexibility in the job market and the ability to work and manage across different teams with different languages is, I think, what is important in knowing how to learn both languages. And then also being able to code effectively in multiple languages is really a sign of good technical talent, right, to potential employers. If you put in your CVs that you know maybe Python and R, and maybe a few more languages, but then your strength is, for example, Python, and then you can showcase that through several examples of projects, then I think that would be quite a strong case for an employer to hire you because they see the ability and potential for you to know multiple languages and being able to code in them quite well. And I think we come to, I want to also address the elephant in the room, which is knowing how to code still useful? So like it's what you're learning here today and also yesterday and also in the coming days still useful in the age of AI now, where like what is the point of learning how to code, right? So when AI can do a much better and faster job than you, and we will see a little bit later when we use AI basically to do a lot of these different coding tasks. And I think the question and the answer for me is still a resounding yes. It's still very, very useful to to know how to code properly. And this comes from the idea that knowing how to use Python really or coding properly knows really empowers you to understand and be in control and being able to build better with AI. So I think it's like, do we still need to learn mathematics, right, in the presence of calculator? So yes, of course, you still need to learn and understand the basics in order to use a calculator, and then know what we're doing before you use the calculators to do the task, right? So you're still the one who make the decisions. You're still the one who set the goal, and then the AI is just basically the tool to help you to do that. And so naturally, with the same logic, of course, we still need Python. And you're not just a consumer of AI products. If you know how to code properly, if you know how to code properly, if you understand coding and Python, you can actually participate in this AI economies and build things that other people use, right? So AI, it's making code more accessible. It's making it easier and write faster code, but it's absolutely not a replacement for human coder. And due to the issues of hallucinations, as you probably are well aware of, so a lot of these codes, when they are generated by AI models, a lot of times they are hallucinate very badly. And so this is a very big issue. I mean, if you are researchers and you can kind of debug and you can kind of change and you can kind of be flexible with it, right? But if you work in a production-ready environment, and this is very dangerous for code security. And a lot of apps and products are being created nowadays by what people call vibe coders. So it's basically a new way of coding nowadays with these rise in AI tools, where these coders they use AI, they only use AI to code, right? So they do not learn how these programming language just works. They do not learn the basics. They basically use AI to do everything for them, and then they use AI to debug. They use AI to change things, and they use AI to push everything into productions. And this is and basically nowadays, like anyone can use these AI generated code to create apps and products. But the problem and the danger is these apps and products are very untested and unchecked. Right? So you don't have the robust system where you have common human coders to check these code properly, and you do not have the rigid structure before where you have a teams where multiple people check the code to make sure that the code is it's ready and make sure the code is actually not pushing out anything that is harmful and dangerous to the users. And so this is actually could be dangerous and very fatal. So I think we've had seen quite a few cases where you have very popular AI generated apps that are creating harms already. I think the most recent case is the T app recently in Silicon Valley, where a vibe coder, someone who did not basically know how to code, they basically vibe code up an app that can let I think females participants and users to put in informations about maybe guys that they have dated in an area and have very bad experiences, right? So it's basically like like a telltale app where you if someone has a very bad experience with dating, then basically they can put up an information of the person that they do not enjoy having the date with on the app, and then other people would then vote, and then other people would then also maybe put their experience also with the same person so that other people can avoid this person. So this app became quite viral, I think, in Silicon Valley last month. And then immediately after, when this app became popular, it was immediately hacked, and the entire database of all the female users were leaked, and then were sold on the open market. And so all these people that use the app as users and put the informations, their personal informations, their photos, their credit card informations are now all exposed online, because the creators of the app basically did not have all these securities and checks in place when they create the app, because they basically just use AI tools to create the app entirely without any checks and balances, right? So that's basically a big dangers for tools and apps that are created by only just AI without any human coders to check them. And also, one of the other dangers is many of these AI models are recommending packages that can be easily manipulated and injected by attackers for malicious purposes, right? So as you can imagine, if I am a hacker and I want to hack these AI models, I can create maybe a libraries or a package that I can try to make it become very popular with SEO methods. And then these packages have maybe my malicious code that can kind of create backdoors to users' data and users' computers. And when these packages become popular, it then are scraped by these companies that are training these AI models, and then it becomes a part of these AI models, right? And when you use AI models to generate code for you, it basically takes from these data sets that it kind of scrape and train on, and then it can take these packages that are malicious and then put into the models for you to go into productions. And then so any users that use your apps and users that use your products are now basically vulnerable to these attacks from these hackers. And so this has become a reality with a lot of these apps already, where they are having malicious AI injection codes into packages and libraries that are being scraped by these AI models. And these AI companies, they are scraping the internet indiscriminately, right? So they do not they really do not have any sensors as to like where they scrape the data from. They scrape the data illegally from your data, from your family's data, from anyone basically to create the AI models. It's really useful and fun to use, but then when you use it, you have to be very careful on what you use it for and how you use it, and the content that is generated. So one policy that I always have with AI content, no matter if it's text with ChatGPT or with code or with images, is always you trust, but you verify, right? So you trust that the model is able to create something useful for you, but you have to verify the data and the information that the model gives you. So that should be the mode whenever we use AI generated contents. And these AI models get things wrong all the time, and so um, you have to be very careful to use them, and then you cannot debug the wrong code. It spits out if you cannot understand the code in the first place. So that's why it's still very useful and very important to learn how to code and understand how to code properly. And also one of the reasons that I think for today's sessions, like I want to focus more on like the way to learn how to code is that coding alone is no longer the star. So like knowing how to code is no longer basically like before. I think like just knowing how to code, and you can become quite essential and very vital for the company. But it's no longer the case. Right? You've probably seen already a lot of articles and news about how a lot of companies, especially big tech companies, are laying off thousands and thousands of developers. And a lot of these developers are now out of a job and without being able to get into the job market, because a lot of them are being replaced right now by these AI models, even like these companies knowing the dangers of these AI models on how they cannot replace human coders completely with AI. And so what's more important now is actually a lot of other skill sets, right? So it's what is important is the problem solving skill set. You have to understand the why behind the code. You have to understand why the code is the way they are. I mean, even if it's AI generated code, you have to look into the code and you have to understand what it means and then how this code runs in order to validate and verify the code correct or not. And also you have to frame meaningful questions in order to generate the right code for you, right? So it's not just that you can just ask the code, hey, generate me a website that can make me $1 million. No, you have to be very specific. You have to write it the right questions. You have to give it the right frameworks in order for it to give you exactly what you want. And critical thinking is also another skill that is extremely needed. I think the kind of the dilemma is that a lot of us are using these AI tools to basically offload our critical thinking, right? So we don't want to think anymore. We want to have the path of least resistance. So we basically like do a lot of these heavy thinking by just using these AI tools to help us think, to help us coming up with ideas and to brainstorm for us, right? But then I think that's useful. I think that AI tools can be a really useful tool to help you brainstorm and to work together with you. But I think it's still very important to cultivate your own critical thinking in the sense that you think on your own first before you use these AI tools. And then you use these AI tools then to validate and also to brainstorm your original ideas, right? So you and then you are able to become much better user of these tools instead of being a slave to using these tools all the time. And so with critical thinking, you are able to choose the right methods, and you're not just using the right and the latest tool. You're also interpreting results in real world context instead of just listening to exactly whatever it is that the AI tool does. And for communications, I think this is also another important skills that are gradually becoming more and more offloaded towards the AI, but I think it's still something that that is still extremely important, which is like the ability to communicate and the ability to write and the ability to say exactly it is that you want, right? So I think a lot of people talk about prompt engineering. A lot of people talk about how to use AI the right way, and using AI the right way. It's just learning how to communicate in the right way, right? So it's the ability to explain yourself exactly it is what that you want, explain yourself exactly it is that you want the model to do, and then the ability to also explain insights clearly to a non-technical audience. And so it's basically you're able to tell stories, you are able to ask the models exactly it is what you want. So like all these skills I think are extremely important in order for you to use the tool better and to make better use of these tools and AIs in order to make your life a little bit easier with coding and other tasks. And also, I want to talk about the thinking of transitions from a coder to a scientist. So, being a scientist means so like a scientist is a loaded word, right? So, like a lot of times, like people don't want to say it because they don't want to sound that okay. I don't want to feel like a fraud because I don't think I'm a scientist. I do not know math. I do not work with equipments. Like I don't know how to do things. But I think we can democratize the use of the word scientist in the sense that I think being a scientist is just being curious, right? So you're curious about the world around you. You're curious about the questions about societies, about policies, about things around you, and you want to question things. You want to ask the right questions to help answer these problems. And I think that's what it means to be a scientist, right? So it doesn't have to mean that you have a degree. It doesn't have to mean that um, you take 5, 10 years of your life to spend like hundreds and thousands of dollars to have a degree to call yourself a scientist. You can also be a scientist by being curious about the world around you and asking the right questions. And so and on that front, if you ask it the right questions, then now with all these tools, then you can start to design experiments. You can start to have fun, and you can actually start to answer these questions that you have by having these AI tools as your co-pilot to help you, right? So it's basically to help to make sense of the complexity of the world around us, to help to make sense of the problems that you have either in your job or in your daily life. So the code is no longer as important. The code is basically your instrument, and it's not your identity, right? So a lot of times, like a lot of I think I see a lot of people who spend a lot of time to code, and then they consider coding as their main identity. But then I think in the age where now AI can do this job a lot better than you, I think the code is no longer the thing that matters, right? So you can generate codes like very cheaply, and very quickly right now with ChatGPT or with Cursor. So it's no longer the important thing. It's like I think it's the thinking, it's the asking the right questions, and then trying to understand if the answer that these models give you is the right one, and also thinking through these AI generated content. So it's a science in data science and in computer science that actually sets you apart, and not the data and not the computer part. And I want to talk, and I think this is now we come to the important part of this short session. So it's how to learn coding fast and not to forget it, right? So, and this is come partially from my own personal experience of I think as I mentioned earlier, I learned how to do coding on and off for I think 10 times before I actually be able to do it properly. So I think the wrong approach and the approach that I did before is actually to binge watch tutorials, right? So and this is also partially the reasons why I don't want to have this session as like another tutorial where you code along with me and then you try to emulate it, whatever it is that I do. So I think binge watching tutorial is not the right way. So it can become very addictive, where you search on YouTube for I don't know Python programming full course, and then you see like a 16 hours course on learning how to code Python, or learn machine learning for like 8 hours or something, and then you watch that, and then you try to do exactly it is that they're doing there on the course, and then you think that okay, maybe I know a little bit about Python, but then when you come across a real world problem that you have, then you don't know how to solve it because it does not abide exactly like the problem that you see in these courses. And so just binge watching these tutorials and then reading tons of docs and then taking notes is not the efficient way to do it, because you forget everything very quickly. And these approach do not make the language and the knowledge become a part of you, right? So you not learn these things and then you do not integrate them, and then you do not marinate with them, and they do not become a part of you. So you do not you forget them very quickly. And I have committed this sin before, and I've learned and I've forgotten code like very very often, and then so this is like a very painful adventure that I do not want you to go on, and I want you to recommend you a better way to learn how to code, so that you do not have to go through these painful process again. So the right way of learning how to code now is actually learned by doing, so with a purpose. So you should start with a very specific goal. And this comes a lot from your own personal life, right? So like learning without a goal is basically just you're just wandering without a map, right? So and as an example, so like if I am so for example, I can take from my own personal example, right? So I used to work in the Ministry of Finance in custom, and I work a lot on exports and import data for my country. So like for example, for customs, like you have access to a lot of information about so what is the imports look like in our ports nowadays, like what is the imports look like, how many ships are coming into the countries, like how many parcels, how many weights, and things of that nature. So we have a lot of data about imports and exports. And so what are some of the problems that we are interested in? Like we are interested in forecasting. So we want to forecast. So okay, so we have a very seasonal changes, right? And like how many ships are coming into the countries, or how many flights are coming into the country per day, per month, per year. So in some seasons, there's a lot more packages that are coming into the country because people order things a lot more, or maybe like for example, winters is one of those time where people do a lot of holiday shopping, and so there's a lot of more shipments coming from abroad, whether through ships or through airplanes. And so these are the things that I'm super interested in, which is like how to do a forecast system of these shipments, so that I can make better decisions about how to allocate my, for example, my staff or maybe my teams at the ports, so that they can better check and they can better process these shipments. Right? So that, for example, if I if I create a forecast model, then I know exactly in what month that maybe approximately what month we have more shipments based on historical data. Right? And so this basically like I want to build a forecast system for my shipments and my import and export data. And I want to maybe use it with Python or with machine learning. And so I have a very clear goal here, which is like I want to build a system of forecast systems, like you can think of the system in however you want, whether it's just like a Jupyter notebook or whether it's like some like a small script that you can run that can give you just like the numbers of the month and how many shipments you're expecting in a month, for example. Or your goal could be a little bit more in general, like you want to get a job as a Python developer in 6 months, right? And so this is also a goal, which is like a goal related more to your motivations and your what you want to do as a job. Then it's also a goal that you can clearly define, even though you do not know exactly it is that you want to do first, right? Or you want to maybe do a very specific task, like you want to automate write my reports at work using Python scripts. So this is exactly basically what I do now in my jobs, where I try to automate a lot of my tasks and my jobs with AI and Python code. And so the important thing here in the first step, it's not to go straight into a tutorial. It's to ask yourself, why are you learning to code? What it is that you want to use coding for? Are you using it in order to make your job a little bit easier, to make your life a little bit easier? Then what are some of the improvement that you want in your life and job? And so what are some of the projects and things that you want to do? And so that you set a very specific goal that you want, right? So it could be not, you can be have set several goals for the week or the month as well. So it could be that, okay, so for this week, I want to use Python to solve this particular task. And then for this other week, I want to use Python to solve this particular task. Then you start to use AI and Python to help you to do these tasks for you. And then you learn things as you build these things, right? So you're not just learning by watching tutorials on like the 10th tutorial on how to write the functions, but you actually learning to build things and to solve problems in your daily life specifically. And then you learn how to use these tools to solve them. And then that helps you to learn these things permanently and not forget it. And then the second thing is then you start to create a roadmap based on the goal that you have here, right? So you have a very specific goal. And so once you have that goal, then you start to create a roadmap on how to learn that. And so that's, you do not learn randomly. So as I mentioned earlier, you not just search randomly on YouTube for a tutorial to learn Python in 10 hours, but you actually do research on how to achieve your goal, right? So for example, if I want to, for example, I want to create a forecast system using Python and machine learning, then I do my research on how to do that, which is like I do Google, I do ChatGPT, I ask these tools to how to forecast to build a forecast system using Python, and then I look at some of these articles and some of these tutorials as well, and then I collect them together, right? So I do not watch them, I do not read them immediately, but I basically collect them. Like I collect some of the things, like you do skim through of these content, and then you collect the things that you think are important that can help you. And then you can use tools like Notebook LM to collect the relevant materials, right? I will show you this tool a little bit later. So Notebook LM is basically one of these tools where you can collect a lot of different materials and a lot of your learning, and then you put all of these different resources into one place. And then you can start to chat with all these resources at the same time. What this model does is that it basically pulls information from everything that you give to it, and then it creates basically a chatbot where you can interact with it. And so if, for example, if in the second step we're here where I do research on how to achieve my goal of creating a forecast system, maybe I find 5, 10 different resources. Then I put all these resources into these Notebook LM model. And so this is basically the input part of this model here, right? So I put a data in the beginning, which is like all these resources on how to to build a forecast system, and then I put all these data and all these input into my algorithm, which is the Notebook LM, and then the output is basically you can chat with it, you can ask it questions, and then it gives you the right answers on how to basically build your roadmap to learn how to do this properly. And so this tool helps you to collect relevant materials. You can ask it very focused questions so that you can do the job better. And then it builds a personal learning path for you. And this is the way that you can help. So every single project that you have, you can have a separate Notebook LM in order to solve that specific task and specific goal for you.
So this is the way that you can stay organized with your projects, and you can basically work and you can learn a lot, and you can basically have like a repositories of projects and learning that you have over time that you can always come back to and you can always review when you need to. And so when you have this like Python roadmap, then you can keep track of what other things you can learn about the language. And the next step is basically like once you have the goal that you want, and then you have a roadmap of how you do it, then you start to execute. Right? You execute this project, and then you start to track your progress. And then you mark what you've done each day. Each day, you log resources that you've used, and then you basically use these models to how to form your next steps, or you can think about how to see your next steps. Right? And then you can see your growth visually, basically by charts and streaks and checklists over time. When you have this, like once you start to log how you do things, then you will see like the exponential growth of how you learn. Like it might be that, okay, for the first day, I only spend half an hour to maybe do some research on what it is that I want to do, and the specific goal that I have. But then once you have the roadmap, then you become a bit clearer and you spend more time with it. And then once you start to execute, then you start to spend more and more time with it. And then over time, you will see the gradual build up of your learning process. And so this is there's some kind of magic that happens in between this first and third step here, where you like the more that you work on these different projects and the more that you start to track your progress, then the more that you become more efficient in the way that you execute these projects, and you can become better at learning, and you become better at knowing what to do exactly every time you come across a problem that you don't know how to solve by yourself. And then the next step is to always challenge yourself, right? So every day you challenge yourself, do something a little bit different. And so you have these tools and these steps that you have, right? So every time you start to work on your projects, you challenge yourself a little bit. You use these AI tools to generate maybe coding challenges for you, and then you apply these learning immediately through the executions of your projects. And so it's basically it gives you the ability to write code anywhere from your coding notebooks to your terminal. And I highly recommend you fail fast. Like you do not get frustrated when you run codes and it does not run or it gives you error. I mean, do get frustrated, but do not get frustrated to the point where you quit, because the frustration and the failing is actually, and the making mistakes is actually what helps you to learn deeply. So every time you fail, every time you run the code and it does not run and it gives you error, and then you spend time to debug it, it creates new brain connections for you, and then you understand, okay, so this is the way to solve it. Every time you solve it and you have a eureka moment, and then it creates new brain connections for you, and then you are able to do better and you are able to solve problems a lot quicker every time you come back to it later. And uh, final step is basically just to reinforce this cycle, right? So you should always reinforce this cycle of learning, and you practice and you apply and then you review. So you have these execution steps that you have. So you execute them and you learn along the way while you're executing these tasks. And then you practice while you're learning these executions with these AI models, coding challenges. Then you apply them in your task, and then you review them, right? So you just don't, and you review them by basically using Notebook LM, basically. So Notebook LM, like once you log the progress and the things that you do, it can also gives you, okay, so I've done this and this and that. So what is the next thing that I want to learn? And please generate a coding challenge for me to help me learn my next step. And so like having all these tools at your fingertips, you are able to build these cycles, learn, practice, apply, review very easily. And so you can build your personal knowledge map, and then you can actually become better and better every day. And then I think one thing that I highly recommend is also teach others to learn how to do these coding and then to become better. You can also write your own summary as well of how these different tools work and how these different functions work and how these different classes work, so that every time you come back to these summaries using Notebook LM, you can also be reminded of the way that you do things as well. So one final thing that I want to say about this is that coding is not a, it's a tool, it's not the goal. So you use it to build, to solve, and to explore. And that's how you remember these tools and these methods for life. Right? So it's not that the coding is everything. It's just how you use it and how you use it properly to solve and to explore problems. That's how you will remember it. And another thing that I want to recommend is to have this Python roadmap in mind. So, like, I understand that a lot of people also still need some kind of maybe path or maybe guidance, then I would highly recommend using these kind of roadmaps. So this is basically, I will share this documents afterwards so that you can click on it. It basically gives you step by steps on what are some of the things that you should know when you learn Python, right? So that what are some of the basic things that you should know about, and then you can use ChatGPT to basically generate maybe ways that you can practice them, and what are some of the immediate step that you want to learn about, what are some of the advanced steps that you want to learn about. So that's all of these things can become quite easily and manageable once you start learning them along your project. And that's it for my presentations. So the next step that I want to do is actually to showcase to you basically like these steps, how to learn them and using these different tools that we have. Right? So I want to stop sharing screen here and start sharing my. Okay, I want to go over some of the questions that people have now before we continue. Yes, so we have quite a bit of questions about are we coding today? So there will be some coding notebooks. So I have two coding notebooks on Python basics. We will go over them in a little bit, but we will not run through everything. So I will just run some examples so that you can see how it works and then you can run through them yourself. So as I mentioned earlier in the beginning, like I want to show you how to learn how to code and then you can adapt these things to your own needs, right? So that you don't have to like every time you learn Python, you don't have to relearn like what a variable is because like you will come across its issues, right? So this sessions will not be the first time that you learn Python. Like I guarantee, like you will learn these sessions, you will learn things on your own, and then you will forget about it, and then maybe like a few weeks later, you want to relearn the session again, and then you will have to relearn all these things again. So my recommendation is to find your own workflows by using the steps that I mentioned here today and outlined today. And then we will have some coding notebook for you to run, but I will also show you so what I would do if I am a learner of Python right now, like what I would do to be able to learn efficiently right now at the Manor. And I'll go through some questions right now. Yes, I think we have quite a lot of different recommendations from people on how to code in the chat, and I think they're all great. I highly recommend them to also go through the chat as well to see if there's anything useful that you can see. I can also share afterward in the sessions maybe previous iterations of this Python class. So in previous iterations of this Python class, we already have instructors who basically go through step by steps on how to write the variables, how to write the functions, how to write a list. So you are able to basically like learn these things like if you want to. But I think for this sessions, it's more about learning the mindsets and then maybe learning how a new way to learn how to code with AI, right? So you can tailor your own learning for this purpose as well. So I think a lot of these questions are related to, I think, yeah, to more materials. And I think we can probably move to the next section, which is basically I will show you some of the resources and the things that you can do and how to use them. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm sharing basically some of the resources that I want to recommend. First thing that I want to recommend is this Python mind map that I mentioned earlier. So this is basically it gives you the keywords, I would say. It's the keywords of everything that you should be able to understand and be aware of when you learn Python. So as you can see, it looks like a lot, but if you go through each of them, maybe for one weekend you go through the basics, one weekend you go through the intermediate, one weekend you go through the advanced. It's not a lot, right? So these when you think about learning or human language where you have to learn like all the grammars and syntax like very complexly, this is not a lot of work basically. So this is quite manageable. So you have these keywords here, right? And so what I would recommend is to use these keywords as your jumping point to then use things like ChatGPT to help you to learn, right? So for example, if for today I want to learn Python statement, what I would do is to ask it, so I want to learn about Python statements. Please give me exercises and explanations, code, how to learn. So you can now basically give these ChatGPT models these questions, right? And then it basically gives you very detailed instructions on how to learn each of these things, right? So that's why that's part of the reason why I don't want to spend a lot of times to basically like do all these small coding exercise with you, because I think that's each of you will have a different needs on exactly what it is what you want. It might be that some of you are already familiar with the basics, some of you, and then you want to start on intermediate, then I would recommend to go for these things. But if you are starting with the basics, then I would recommend going through all these things in order to know exactly it is that you need to know, and maybe some of the other things that you do not know already, right? So, um, and and then you can use these ChatGPT models to help you to create your own examples, and then you do not have to abide by my own example. You can use these models to create your own examples to learn better, right? So you will have also access to these two coding notebooks. So this is Colab, which is one of the tools that I mentioned earlier for coding notebooks. And this is basically a Jupyter notebook that are on in the cloud. And the good thing about this is that it's you can go to colab.research .google.com, and then you can sign in using your Google account, and then you basically will have access to this basically. I will also share these two coding notebooks for you in the chat here, so you can maybe use it if you need to. Yeah. Quickly put up these two notebooks and then put them in the chat. And I will also share the link to the roadmap as well. So the way that you use Google Colab is basically once you start, right, you can start a new notebook if you want to. But if you want to use the existing notebook that I just share, what you can do very easily is, let me go refresh this. Dang it. So as you can see here, if you go to this thing here, you can go to change running type. And then if you want to just learn Python regularly, then you can just leave everything as is. But if you want to, you can also change to GPU, right? So it's where if you want to learn deep learning, for example, then this is basically very useful for you to learn. And it's having some issues. So maybe we can just try this thing first. So this is one of the notebooks, right? So it has both the text sections. It's basically markdown sessions where you can write what you want for your notes. And then it also have a coding note blocks here where you can basically start to run the code, right? And then the useful thing about Colab is that it's already an environment that loaded with a lot of good libraries already. So you do not have to basically create your own versions, and you do not have to load different things, and you don't have to install a lot of things. So this is a very good tool for learning how to code initially. And then the way that you can use this is that you can go to File, and then you can go to Save a Copy in Drive. Right? So what this does is that it will save a version of these two notebooks in your own drive where you can code and you can change things and you can have fun with it and you can run things the way that you want to. Right? So you do not have to be dependent on my own notebook here. So this is these two notebooks that I will give you. I've already sent you in the chat, and I will also share it with you after the session is over as well. And in these two notebooks is basically the basics of Python, where you can go through from like the first command to basically variables. What does it mean? What are some of the errors that you can encounter when you run things, so that you're aware of how to name variables the right way? What are some of the data types? How to run them? And yeah, Boolean, what does it mean? Floats, what does it mean? Integer, what does it mean? What are some of the potential warnings? Strings, what does it mean? How to concatenate, slice, and dice, and coerce types. What are some of the common data structures in Python? So things like lists or dictionaries, and how to retrieve values, how to access. What are some of the common control flows in Python, right? So like this basically are basically like what you would go to, like if you are in a traditional Python course, then basically we would go through these things line by line, which will take a lot of times from you. And it might not be that you not basically you do not want to learn all these things at the same time, but maybe you want to learn them through project-based um, way of learning, right? And then this is more for Python, which is focused a little bit more on yeah, pandas as a libraries that helps you to manipulate data better and to yeah, use maybe different data sources that you have to load the data into Python. So this is for Colab. And one thing that is also super fun with Colab is that with Colab now it's also you can generate also code with AI in Colab. So as an example, right, Colab is connected with Gemini, which is Google's proprietary AI model. And let me just connect it here. Okay, then let me just stop these sessions. I have too many runtimes running at the same time, so I'll just delete these to run this example. So as an example, I can, so for example, right, if let's start with ChatGPT, right? So maybe my task right now is, this is just an example, right? So maybe I want to start with a goal. And my goal for today is maybe I want to learn, maybe create a roadmap to learn Python in 3 weeks. Please help me create that. I want to code as much as possible. Then this is, as an example, right? It's the first step that we have in the recommendations, right? Which is like you define a goal, and so you have your goal that you want to learn Python in 3 weeks, and then you want to code as much as possible, and so you have a philosophy that helps to drive the model to give you basically a very good overview of how you can do these in 3 weeks here. And then basically you can just ask it to please expand the first week to help me learn right now. Right, so it will then create a very detailed curriculum for the first week, which focus more on basically the basics. Basically this file here, like how to learn the basics in Python, so that it's more tailored towards your way of learning. Right, so this is basically if you want to create a roadmap in Python, right? So what about a different goal? So if your goal is to maybe, for example, if you are maybe like a someone who works in the wine industry, for example, right? So want to learn, I want to maybe learn how to analyze wine quality using data. Could you help me create a roadmap to learn? And if you have this specific, very specific goal, then it will basically gives you some option here in terms of how you can go about to learn this using a roadmap that it charts out here, right? So one of the things that is quite commonly used is the wine quality data sets on red wine and white wine, which has quite a lot of different informations about tests and target and qualities already. And so these things, basically like having this clear goal, you can then learn how to do it properly step by step here, right? So this is basically like how you can basically use these tools to create your own projects, and you learn by project-based learning instead of learned by repetitions, by just repeating the same thing again and again and again, and then forgetting them, and then you have to come back to the same thing again and again. Now you are learning by actually focusing on projects, and then you tailoring it to your own needs and your own way of learning as well. And so, what is the useful thing that you can use Google Colab AI for? So maybe if you have this motivations, right, you want to learn how to analyze wine quality data using these data, and what you can do with Google Colab AI is that you can actually use these directly in your Google Colab, right? So, for example, um, maybe find and create, load wine quality data set. So here we have the wine quality data sets from UCI as an example, right? For me, UCI. And then the Gemini AI from Google, what it does is that it will basically help to find this wine quality data sets and help you to load all these data sets into the model, into the coding notebook that you have here. Right? And then you can accept it and run. And then you come across an issues here, and you can actually explain the error. Right? And then it gives you like a lot of different things here. Right? So what are, and then basically like with these errors, like you will basically learn like how to debug basically. So like this is basically like a learning based on the errors and the things that you come across while you're learning it, right? So as you can see here, the code that are generated by the model, it does not work immediately, right? So you still need a little bit of changes. You need to have a little bit of um, refinement in order to be able to get this a bit to get this to load, right? So as you can see here, the model is not able to load the data sets. Then what I can do here is I can look into this, open the link. So you have here wine quality data sets already available here. Maybe what I can try is have a Kaggle link. You find the direct link for the dataset line and load that instead of the zip file. As you can see here, right, so one of the issues that we have is that the model is not able to download the zip file, right? And so I'm just asking it in a different way to try to solve that problem. And this is basically the way that you're working with AI. So you um, basically try to do a lot of these iterations, and maybe the right way is to also just do this immediately with ChatGPT, right? So for example, generate code to load the wine quality data set on Google Colab. So ChatGPT give me this version. I can try to change that and then see if it works. And we still come across issues and we can still explain the errors here. Let's go into this then. Let's see if it actually has the data here. So I think as you can see here, right? So the problem that we have is actually the data sets is no longer available on this GitHub page, right? So I think this is why it's important to actually go into all of these problems and look into the errors. And as you can see here, now you learn that maybe the error HTTP error not found means that you do not have the data sets available here, right? And then so next time, every time you come across these issues, then you will know to look into the link in order to make sure that you find the right link. And so as you can, what you can do is to maybe the link no longer works and you find me a new link for the CSV files. And then you have a new updates here. Let's try this and see if this works. Okay, so this works now, right? So as you can see, we have gone through quite a little bit of back and forth in order to get exactly what we want, but we have learned basically two errors that were from this model, right? And then you learn how to solve them by looking into the code itself and then try to understand it. And then with this code here, then you can also ask it to help to explain the code for you, right? Explain the code, me line by line. So with the correct code, then you can start to ask the model to help you to understand. So for example, here, first line imports basically means that we're importing the Panda libraries in order to manipulate the data. And then the second and third line here is basically you create two variables, red wine URL and white wine URL, which then stores these two links to these CSV files, right? And then next step is that you load these two data sets into the environment by setting to another two variables that kind of read this CSV file and load them into the environment. So this is how you basically learned how to code by having a project, right? So we start with an idea, which is like, I want to learn how to analyze the wine quality data sets using Python. Then you have your clear roadmap here. You use these different packages and then you learn them. And then you ask it to basically start to generate the code for you to get started. And then you learn how to debug by looking into the errors and the explanations. And then you ask, and then once you get the code that works, you start to ask it to explain for you, right? Like what does each of these things means? I mean, you can also start with the foundationals, which is like you learned all these foundational thing first. And then once you have like a clear foundations and these things you can go through in one day, right? You can go through like in a few hours, and then you can start this with also a stronger foundations where you can understand things more clearly, and then you can start to ask the right questions. And so I think the next question I want to ask is this: I want to analyze, maybe I want to explore data on what it has and have some visualizations. And then we can see what this model can help us. And what I want to ask you is to basically to be quite flexible, right? With what models you use. Like sometimes you can use ChatGPT, sometimes you can use Gemini directly here, and it really depends on like what tools you are familiar with and what tools you want to work on, right? So, like for example, if I see that Gemini does not give me what I want, I can just also ask ChatGPT to generate these codes for me. And then it gives me basically like some point for exploratory analysis. So as you can see here, the name DF is not defined. What it means is that I have a DF here at the end that I do not have. So I want to come back here. I want to reload it to make sure that I have the right variable. And then I can start running it. And then if I want to do some visualizations, then I can do this to load some of the data sets and start to plot things, right? And every step of this, you can ask the model to explain the code for you. Right? Can you explain the code I just run? And then the model will basically give you like a very clear explanations. And as you can see here, this is basically the visualizations for the distributions of the wine quality scores. So how many wines that score 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you can gradually build up your different visualizations and insights that you are doing here, right? So this basically is the way to learn how to do coding for a lot of people nowadays, which is like they try to have a project and then they start with this project and they look into this project on how um, to do these projects by using these AI tools. So I think this is how like for me personally, I think this is a very efficient way to learn how to do coding that is very tailored to you. And then you can also dictate exactly it is that you're trying to learn. And you do not need to have an uniform experience with everyone, but something that is tailored to you. Right? And I want to also showcase very quickly here um, Notebook LM. So Notebook LM is basically a tool from Google that helps to gather a lot of different resources that you have, and then a lot of these different resources then become your own AI databases, right? So, for example, as you can see here on the interface, you have sections where you can add resources. This is basically the input sections of the model that I mentioned earlier. And then you have these chat sections here where you have a summary of all the data that you give it. And then you can add notes where you can basically like add what you learned and things that you want to note here while you're learning about it. You can also create an audio overview. What this means is that it basically creates like a kind of a podcast where you can actually listen to it and you can actually have like I don't know, like while you cleaning the house or you washing your dishes, you can actually listen to whatever topics that you are trying to learn here as a type of podcast. And a really cool thing that you can also do is you can actually go into interactive mode where it's a podcast where it's like a podcast with two hosts, and you can also comment, you can join, and then you can actually talk to these people, right? And ask them to explain the concepts to you like you are actually an actual podcast participants. So I think this is a really super cool way to learn things nowadays where you can put in basically anything that you want in here in order to learn anything very quickly and efficiently. in any way that you want, whether you are a visual learner, so you can also create a mind map where you can basically give you a lot of different explanations and maps out exactly it is and where it is that you want to learn things, and you can actually create further informations based on the tools and the information that you give it. Or if you are an audio visual learner, then you can also listen to podcasts. You can also interact with your podcast host. It can also create a study guide for you, where it basically summarizes everything that you see here in a neat notebook, and then you can basically read it as like a summary of everything that you have. And you can also create an FAQ, and this comes into the step 4, which is the challenge part of the journey, which is you can actually create notes and questions that you can actually try to quiz yourself on. So, for example, if you're trying to learn about this topic on AI's impact on educations, it can create this FAQ, and then you have these different questions on how will AI transform roles of learners in educations. Once you have learned all these things through here, you can try to challenge yourself with these FAQs, and then you also have some guidance on what the answers could look like, right? You can also create timelines for you if there's a very clear timeline on all these things that are happening here on the sources that you have. So with briefing docs, this is especially important if you are working, for example, if you're working on a project like this for maybe your boss or someone that you want to create a general report on. And this can also create like a briefing documents for you as well, so that you can learn quicker and easier. So I can show an example of adding resources here. As an example, maybe I want to search some resources on AI, on higher education, impact, negative. So a lot of these things are already like positive impact, right? So I want to learn more about maybe what are some of the negative impacts. Then I can also add these resources into here by just having links, paste the links here, inserts, and then this links now become a part of my database that I can query on, right? So, and this is also works the same way with coding as well. Like if you want to learn coding and you want to learn have a very specific project for your coding, then you can add a lot of resources on like coding and roadmap for coding here. And then it can also give you the same kind of guidance. And so this is the tool that you use basically for step 3 and step 4, which is you creating a roadmap, you execute, and then you review, and then you challenge yourself by having all these things that are available to you. And then this is basically like a chatbot here, right? You can ask it, can you give me some challenging questions about these topics so I can question myself? And then it basically will give you like a list of possible questions that you can use basically in order to challenge yourself in step 4 basically. So this is basically the tool that I highly recommend you to use in order to iterate to these the 5 steps process that I mentioned earlier about learning how to learn and get better and better every day and challenge yourself on all these different things. And one final thing that I want to mention is Cursor as a tool for AI coding. So we've gone through Colab, right? You've gone through Notebook LM. So what are the other things like Cursor or GitHub Copilot? So I want to share here very quickly. The Cursor as an AI coding tool. So Cursor, it's basically a coding notebook where you have AI immediately available on into the coding notebook for you. Right? So as an example, this is basically the app where you generate the certificates for your for this summer school. So I'm still working on it to generate the certificates. And so as you can see here, I write a lot of functions. I write a lot of imports. I don't have a lot of documentations on exactly what I write here. And so One thing that we can do with this is that on the right hand of the screen here, as you can see here, we have a chatbot that you can chat with and talk to. And what I can do is I can push Ctrl OK. What does this code do? And then we have a chatbot right in our browser that can help you to explain immediately like what each of these functions and things does, right? And what I want right now is that because I have written a lot of code here, but I do not have any documentation. So what happens if I get sick and then I need someone to help me to also um, push this code into an app where you can use an app at the end of the summer school to generate your certificates, for example. And what I want is very clear documentations on what each of these code means so that they can look into it and they can change things if they need to. And so please update the app.py file to add documentations to clearly explain the code. And then what this coding tool will do is it will read this ai.py file and then provide basically documentations for very detailed documentations, actually. You can see here in the panel here on the right, where it gives clear definitions on what this file has and what each of the function means. And we will wait a little bit until it gets to the end. And there we go. It generates a code for you. It puts it into the file. I can review it if I want to before I accept it. And then now I have very clear documentations for my code already in the file, right? So that if I get sick or maybe if I leave Herdy today, then someone else will be able to look into the code and then to be able to fix the code and to update the code so that by the time when you finish the summer school on Friday, then immediately you will have an app online that can help you to generate the certificate for you, and you do not have to and then you can put it on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever it is so you can showcase to people your achievements for attending the summer school. So this is just an example of Cursor as as a coding tool that can help you to really powerfully um, makes your tasks go much quicker, much faster, and you become a much more efficient learner and coder as well at the same time. So these are all the different tools that I want to show you today. And I will also have share documentations, I think like with all these different tools available and documents where you can look more into these tools and how to use them after the end of this course in the afternoon. And then you can go through them. You can basically create your own course in Python and how to do this on your own as well. And so this is my personal recommendations, right? So like this Python course, it's very different. It's very short in the sense that I only show you basically the way how to learn things. We also have these traditional coding notebooks where you can go through them as well if you want to. But my recommendation is to create your own learning path, and by only by creating your own learning path with your specific goal and your specific project, that you can become really efficient and you can become really as one with the language. So it's not that you learn from someone else, but you're actually learning by your own motivations, by having your own projects, and by doing the things that caters to you, that you care about, right? So I can showcase here a project related to policy analysis or on unemployment for youth in Europe, but it's not something that is related to you, right? So it might not be something that you can use in your daily life, and then you cannot use the code that I write. But if you do this learning by this process, by using these tools to support you, and by creating your own personal data, and by using your own personal learning path, and you are able to every single project that you have, you will be able to solve every single project you have. You will be able to have your own way of thinking and your own way of doing and your own way of solving these problems without relying on an established tutorial that you find that you have to relearn and you have to repeat over and over again. And so this is my recommendation for you. I will go over some questions as well before we close out the sessions. So we have Zara who asks, where can we find other public data sets for us to practice? So one place I can recommend is Kaggle. I can showcase here in the chat where. So if you go to Kaggle, this is basically where you find a lot of data sets for practice. Right? So Kaggle is basically a platform with a collection. As you can see here, yeah. So this is kaggle.com. If you go to datasets, then this is where you can find many different datasets that, and for any kind of topics that you want, right? It could be, yeah, so the wine dataset is super popular, as you can see here. It can be sales datasets, or it can be arts and entertainment, it can be on biology, social science, automobile investing, social networks, so like any kind of datasets or topics that you want to, you can find it here. If you want to look for climate change, there's plenty. If you want to look for poverty issues, there's plenty of them. So like my recommendation is to maybe look into exactly this that you are interested in, whether or not it is you're studying a degree in educations, or maybe you're studying a degree in investing and in finance. Then look for the data sets that interest you, and then look for these data sets for testing. And then you can use ChatGPT to ask, hey, I find this super interesting data sets on Kaggle, and I want to learn Python using these data sets for visualizations and for building apps and for building dashboards. And then you use ChatGPT and tandem with Colab to basically try out and learn on your own on how to do this. Right? So that's for in terms of data sets. And yes, we also have some recommendations in the chat here from people who have funding and also have hosted data set as well. I highly recommend everyone to use them and to look into them. There's also a question on Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft Copilot also works very well. It also works very similar to Cursor. I also work with Microsoft Copilot as well. It's just a Cursor is it's also integrated directly into the browser or into the coding experience, and so I don't have to switch back and forth, and so it's a little bit easier for me. But if you use Microsoft Copilot, then go for it. And one thing that is very good with Microsoft Copilot is that if you work for an educational institutions, or if you're a student, then you can also apply for GitHub Copilot for free as well. So you get premium access to GitHub Copilot as part of your student ID email, or your educators email as well. So that's something highly recommended. I will put that resources in the documents for this session as well, so you can look into it. Then you can use Microsoft Copilot for free. Basically, Cursor is also free if you are a student, and you can also apply for the pro version, and you can use that with your email as well. And yes, someone also mentioned that Google also have a data set in their repository. Meta or Facebook also have a data set as well for social goods. So all these institutions, they all have their own data sets, right? And Kaggle is the easiest place because it's an open source platform, so people can share data sets. So a lot of people scrape these data themselves, or these data sets are scraped by educational institutions like universities, and they're shared online for everyone to use. So it's a bit easier on Kaggle, but you can also go into other data sets like Google or maybe meta research as well. So these also works very well. And yes, thank you everyone for your recommendations for different data sets and different ways of learning as well. Um, I I think that's it for this sessions. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to email or message me. I will try to answer them after the data science summer school is over. So I think right now, since we have plenty of time left for the sessions, my recommendation right now is to first bring out a notebook or bring out maybe Microsoft Word file, write down exactly it is that you want with Python or with learning coding, right? So whether or not it is that you want to use it for your work, or whether it is that you want to learn it to become proficient, or whether it is that you want to build apps to make money, all these goals are legit, right? So no goals are the wrong goal. Any goal is the right goal for you and for you alone. And put this goal into paper so that you have a very clear and specific goal that you want. And then you start with this goal, right? And then you start to look into and then you use the process that I mentioned in the presentations on first look into creating a roadmap for you with this goal on how to achieve the learning that you want. And then you start by looking to potential projects that can start you on the road to this goal. Then you basically build up your learning by going into these projects and using these tools to learn. This is the new way of learning. I can also share our previous traditional recordings if you want to learn the traditional way of learning as well. But my recommendations now is to use these new tools to learn, right? Because like you've probably seen articles already of how university students are using AI tools to do their work for them, right? So whether or not to write their essays or whether or not to write their own code for their work. So everyone is already using it, but you will be able to learn better if you integrate these tools into your learning. You're not using these tools to replace you completely, but you need to understand the code behind it as well. So you're not blindly just using these code that are generated, but you are actually looking into the code. You ask the model to explain to you what does this code mean so that you can understand the coding behind it. And then you can fix it and you can become better at error handling. And you also learn the process of how to handle code security. You handle code check as well. You have all these coding practice that are good, that are efficient, so that you can become better coder. And so I will put these kind of recommendations into the documents to send you at the end of this afternoon, so that in the email sent out, so that you can also have that in your repository of knowledge as well. And then you can go back to them and you can reuse them all the time. But for now, please create your own path and your own learning path and your own roadmap, so that you can basically create your own tailored versions of the best possible course for you. So the best possible course is a course, not a course for everyone, but the best possible course for learning for Python, for anything, is the course that is tailored for you and you alone and your own motivations and your own purpose alone. So that will be my takeaway for you for these sessions. And I hope that's what you will be spending, I think, the next 2 hours or maybe the rest of today on, so that you can become more proficient coders and better coders, and for the purpose that is relevant to you. And that's it for the sessions. And for tomorrow's sessions, we will focus on calculus. I think it will be quite a tough sessions, because calculus and math, it's always a tough session. So I would recommend you to maybe for tomorrow sessions to focus on just what's going on in the class, and then afterwards spend some time to also use these AI tools to look into the different keywords and the different explanations for the things that you do not understand in class, right? So these math courses are mainly to help you to build the foundations, so that you can then use that foundations to later on understand better these different algorithms that are built for machine learning and deep learning. And then on Thursday, I will also be your instructor for the build AI agent. And I will also have the very same approach as I have here today, right? Which is more about giving you a guidance on how to find the best way to learn to build AI agent properly. I will also have some templates on how to build AI agents as well. But the way to build AI agents is also to build the agents that are best fitted to your needs. And so that will be very specific to you and not very specific to me. And so that what I will do is I will have some templates for you to maybe build some initial AI agents, but then for the specific purpose that you have, then you will also have to use AI tools to generate these kind of agents for you. And I will show you step by step on how to use these tools to do exactly that. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I will send, I think, all the documentations to you, I think, by the end of today, together with a reminder for tomorrow's sessions. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope you have a lovely day and have fun enjoying learning Python. Bye bye.